Meeting new neighbors. It was a sunny Saturday morning, and I was ready to embrace the weekend with some gardening. I stepped out onto the small patch of lawn in front of my house, humming a tune and already feeling the warmth of the day. As I began trimming a few plants and watering the flowers, I noticed a moving truck pulling up a few houses down. The sight instantly piqued my curiosity. Someone new was moving into the neighborhood. With all my years here, I was well accustomed to the faces that belonged on our street, so I could immediately tell this was someone new. For a few minutes, I continued my gardening while keeping a casual eye on the scene. A woman with short, curly hair, perhaps around my age, hopped out of the truck, followed by a man carrying a few boxes. It looked like a couple was moving in. I debated with myself whether to walk over immediately or wait for a better time. But before I could decide, the woman noticed me and waved. Well, that settled it. I quickly waved back and decided to approach. As I walked up, I smiled warmly, wanting to make a good first impression. "Hi there, welcome to the neighborhood," I called out. She returned the smile, which made me feel immediately at ease. "Thank you so much," she replied enthusiastically. "We're excited to be here. I'm Sarah, by the way." I extended my hand for a friendly shake. "Lovely to meet you, Sarah. I'm Emily. This is such a friendly area. I think you'll love it here." Just as we were shaking hands, her partner came over with a slightly awkward smile, balancing a heavy box. "Nice to meet you, Emily," he said, giving a small nod before heading back to the truck. I couldn't help but chuckle a little at how focused he was on the task at hand. "Well, it looks like you have a busy day ahead of you with all that unpacking," I said, understanding the exhaustion that usually comes with a move. "If you need any help or want a quick break, I'd be more than happy to lend a hand." Sarah seemed grateful, though a bit overwhelmed. "Thank you. I think we're all right for now, but that's such a kind offer." She paused, taking a quick look around. "Actually, could you tell me where the nearest grocery store is? We still need to pick up a few essentials." "Of course," I responded eagerly. "There's a great little supermarket just 5 minutes down the road. They have pretty much everything you might need for your first night. Just take a left at the end of our street, and you'll see it." Sarah looked relieved. "Perfect. It's nice to know we're close to everything. We just moved here from a more rural area, so I'm not used to having things so close by." "Well, you're in for a treat," I said with a chuckle. City life has its perks. I could sense that she was the kind of person I'd get along with easily, given her friendly and down-to-earth demeanor. Sarah's partner, whom she introduced as James, came back to join us, having unloaded the last of the larger boxes. After some pleasantries, they both thanked me for the warm welcome, and I told them again that I'd be just around the corner if they needed anything at all. As I walked back to my house, I felt a surge of excitement. Meeting new people is always a unique experience, but there's something particularly special about welcoming new neighbors. It's an opportunity to start fresh connections and even, perhaps, form friendships. I wondered how they'd settle into the neighborhood, and whether they'd enjoy the local spots I cherished. A couple of days later, I decided it was time to follow up on my first encounter with Sarah and James. Not wanting to arrive empty-handed, I baked a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies. I remembered how I'd appreciated little gestures like that when I first moved in, and I thought it would be a lovely way to make them feel at home. As I approached their house, I noticed they had already set up a few plants in the front garden, making the place look lively. It made me happy to see them putting their mark on the space so quickly. I knocked gently on the door, hoping they were home. Sarah answered with a warm smile, clearly surprised but happy to see me again. "Emily, this is such a wonderful surprise," she said, as she invited me in. "I just thought I'd bring a little something to welcome you properly," I said, handing her the box of cookies. "Oh, that's so sweet of you," Sarah exclaimed, and I could tell she was genuinely touched by the gesture. We settled in their living room, which was still filled with boxes here and there, though they'd managed to arrange the furniture in a cozy setup. Sarah offered me tea, which I gladly accepted. Over the next hour, we got to chatting and I got to know a bit more about her and James. They'd moved here for work and to be closer to family, and Sarah was excited about exploring the city's many museums and parks. James joined us halfway through our conversation, and we all got to talking about the quirks of the area, the little stores that have the best local goods, and my favorite coffee shop around the corner. As our conversation flowed, I offered them some tips about navigating city life, especially for newcomers. For example, I mentioned the benefits of taking early morning walks before the city gets too bustling. I even told them about the farmers market that sets up nearby every Saturday morning. I could tell Sarah was already planning her weekend in her mind, jotting down some of my suggestions on her phone. We talked about the nearby parks that are great for weekend picnics, especially when the weather is nice. We even laughed about some of the neighborhood's eccentricities, like the old bookstore owner who insists on sharing literary trivia with every customer. After a delightful hour, I noticed the time and decided I'd better leave them to their unpacking. As I stood up to go, Sarah thanked me for the cookies, adding that she couldn't wait to dig into them after dinner. "Thank you so much for coming by," she said. "You've made us feel so welcome already." As I walked back to my house, I was filled with warmth. It's amazing how a simple gesture, like offering cookies and sharing some local knowledge, can make someone feel at ease. Meeting Sarah and James felt like the beginning of something wonderful. Welcoming them reminded me of the kindness I'd received from my own neighbors when I first arrived. A few weeks had passed since my first encounter with Sarah and James, and their house was starting to look like a real home. The once bare windows were now framed with curtains, and their small front garden boasted a few colorful plants. I would often see Sarah outside in the mornings, watering her plants or arranging new additions to her garden. We'd exchange a quick wave or a friendly hello if we were both outside at the same time, and each encounter made our connection feel a little stronger. One Saturday morning, I was out for my usual jog when I saw Sarah walking her dog, a friendly brown Labrador with big, curious eyes. I slowed down and waved, catching her attention. She smiled and held the leash tightly as her dog, who seemed excited to meet someone new, started pulling toward me.
"Good morning,"
I called out as I walked up to them. "Morning, Emily. Meet Max," she replied, gesturing to her dog, who was already sniffing my shoes and wagging his tail excitedly. "Oh, he's adorable," I said, scratching him behind the ears. "I didn't realize you had a dog." "Yeah, Max is a big part of the family," she said, laughing. "He's been adjusting to the neighborhood better than we have. He already knows the routes to all the local parks." We chatted for a while about pets and her favorite spots to walk Max. It turned out we both had a fondness for a park nearby with open green spaces and small ponds where people often brought their dogs. Since it was a beautiful day, I suggested we all walk over there together. Sarah seemed thrilled by the idea, and Max was more than happy to lead the way. As we strolled to the park, Sarah and I continued getting to know each other. She shared how they had moved to the city from a small town, where everyone knew everyone. Although she loved the opportunities the city offered, she sometimes missed the sense of close-knit community. I could tell she was still adjusting to the change, and I reassured her that making connections took time. At the park, we let Max off his leash in the dog-friendly area, and he happily bounded over to a group of dogs chasing each other. We found a bench nearby and settled in, enjoying the sun and watching the dogs play. Sarah was curious about my life in the neighborhood and how I'd come to know so many people. "I think it's just about putting yourself out there," I said. "Sometimes it's as simple as saying hello or offering a hand. People are generally nice, but everyone's busy, so it takes a little effort." She nodded thoughtfully, seeming to absorb the advice. "It's funny," she mused. "We've only been here a few weeks, but I already feel so much more at home. And that's thanks to you." Her words warmed my heart, and I felt grateful that I could make her feel welcomed. I knew how much a friendly face could mean in a new place. I told her about the neighborhood gatherings we sometimes had, like the annual summer barbecue in the park, which I was sure she and James would enjoy. On the walk back home, Sarah invited me over for coffee the next day. I gladly accepted, knowing it would be nice to spend more time together, without the rush of a chance encounter. The next afternoon, I arrived at Sarah's with a small gift, a plant I had grown from a cutting of one of my own indoor plants. She opened the door with a big smile, inviting me inside, where the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. Their home had transformed since I last saw it. The boxes were gone, and the walls now held framed photos of friends and family, as well as paintings that reflected her and James's personality. It was cozy, with warm lighting and colorful accents that made the space feel lively. "This place looks amazing," I exclaimed, admiring their setup. "Thank you. We've been working nonstop to make it feel like home," she replied, beaming with pride. "And thank you for the plant. It's beautiful." As we settled in with our coffee, we began sharing stories about our lives and our families. Sarah opened up about her passion for art and her job as a graphic designer, and I shared some of my own experiences in the area. Our conversation flowed naturally, and soon we found ourselves laughing over stories about our childhoods, favorite vacations, and the quirky habits of our loved ones. It was easy to talk to Sarah. We found common ground in so many ways, from our love of travel to our shared fascination with trying new recipes. At one point, she mentioned how much she missed her friends from back home. I could sense she was feeling a bit homesick, so I reassured her that friendships here would grow with time. I also suggested she join some local clubs or groups to meet more people. There's a book club that meets at the library every month, I said. And a few neighbors join a community garden project, if that's something you'd be interested in. Sarah's eyes lit up at the idea. That sounds like so much fun. I'd love to meet more people here, especially with interests like that. She thanked me for the suggestions, and I promised to introduce her to a few of the regulars at the book club the following week. As the afternoon slipped by, we made plans to go together, giving her a new event to look forward to. I felt a sense of joy knowing that our friendship was deepening and that she'd soon be able to expand her circle in the neighborhood. A few days later, Sarah and I attended the book club meeting together. She was a bit nervous at first, but once the discussion began, she quickly found herself engaged in the conversation. Her passion for literature shone through, and everyone seemed to enjoy having her there. By the end of the meeting, Sarah had already exchanged contact information with a couple of the other members, and I could tell she was thrilled. Over the next few weeks, we continued to meet regularly. Sometimes we'd go for coffee, while other times we'd just chat while walking Max. Our friendship blossomed, and it felt wonderful to have a new friend so close by. We'd even started sharing meals on occasion. One evening, Sarah invited me and a couple of other neighbors over for a casual dinner. Her cooking skills were impressive, and we all enjoyed a delightful meal, chatting and laughing well into the night. The small gatherings became a tradition, with Sarah and I taking turns hosting simple dinners with neighbors. Each gathering strengthened the connections on our street, creating a warm, welcoming atmosphere that reminded Sarah of the sense of community she had been missing. One weekend, James suggested we all take a trip to a nearby beach. I eagerly agreed, and we made a day of it, packing a picnic and bringing Max along. The beach was beautiful, with golden sand stretching as far as the eye could see and waves gently rolling in. We spent hours lounging, talking, and sharing stories. The laughter and the easy camaraderie between us all made it a day to remember. By the time we returned home, I felt incredibly grateful for the friendship I had found in Sarah and James. They had brought a new energy to the neighborhood, and I was glad I had been able to help them feel welcomed. As we said goodbye at the end of the day, Sarah thanked me once again for all the kindness and support I'd shown since they moved in. "You've really made this place feel like home," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. "And you've done the same for me," I replied. It was true. Our friendship had brought new joy into my life as well.
Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, and share our channel Magic Mingle with your friends to enjoy more magical stories.